Welcome to Mindset and Money Mastery for Photographers, the podcast. We help overwhelmed photographers make more money while simplifying their business by mastering their, you guessed it, mindset and money. Tune in each week for practical and actionable tips to take your photography business up a notch. Let's dive right in. Okay, so today on the podcast, we have Rob. Rob is one of my former coaching clients, and he has done amazing things with his business. He has done an incredible job building a network in his community and connections with a lot of people, which I think is really amazing. And he is just always, I feel like, putting himself out there, showing up for his business, putting the work in, which I think tells a lot about his work ethic and his determination towards his business. So Rob, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Thank you for that. I'm Rob, located on the East Coast. I'm in Northern Connecticut, and I have been doing photography. I would say picked up a camera. It's only been probably about 20 years. Business-wise, I started my business back in 2017 when I started taking it a little more seriously. And for about a year, people were kind of like, hey, would you do our family photos? We'll give you money. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I've always been in the public sector as far as work wise. And so I've never done business stuff before. I was very hesitant about doing a business. My idea of photography, my purpose for that was just catching, my kids in action and throughout their lives growing up. For me, I've always been drawn to photography and portraits. Like I always loved going up, in the attic in the brown paper bags and finding the old photos, of, when my siblings and I were younger or my parents were younger and things like that. And I just loved just going through the piles of photos and stuff. And I wanted my kids to have that. Of course, things change. And I realized when people started, offering to pay money, I could kind of expand what I was doing and I could upgrade in my equipment. And so it kind of was something that was just a supplemental income to pay for itself. It started getting more and more serious, a couple years into it, and started doing seniors and more families. Then I started doing, headshots. I kind of went into everything. I know everything I read and everything I, watched was, one niche and stick with that. And that just wasn't me. It's still not me. Like I have a style I like, but whoever wants to, kind of jump in that style with me, whether it be families, seniors, sports, is what I got really into. Not so much the action stuff, but the portraits, the making, kids look badass and dark, moody, edgy stuff. And yeah, that's kind of where we are. And yeah, the funny thing about, when I found you, it wasn't that I was looking for a business coach. I wasn't thinking I knew I wasn't doing everything right, but I didn't think I was doing really anything wrong. And then I started listening to your podcast and I was like, holy crap, I could be making a lot more money. Like there's a lot more opportunity out here.
Yeah.
And so I remember, scheduling a call and getting on with you and you were like, yeah, we can make you more money.
Yeah. Okay. So I think what's really unique and what's important to point out in here is that you were working a full-time job.
Yes.
You were shooting around how many sessions a year while working your full-time job?
About 120.
Okay. That's a lot for
Yeah.
most people, right? Most photographers don't shoot that much volume. So when you contacted me and you were like, hey, I have a real job. I'm also shooting 120 sessions a year. I was like, with the right tools here, if you can take what your clients are spending with you now and quadruple whatever that might be, that will be just next level for you. Like that will change everything. So when you first contacted me, you were doing shoot and burn, giving all the digitals, correct?
I was. Yep. Yeah.
And how much were you charging at that time?
I would say by the time that we had connected, I think it was like 500 a session. And they got a lot for their money.
Okay. So do you mind sharing what kind of your clients are spending now roundabout?
Yeah, I would say on average, we're looking at about like 1,800, about 18 to 2,200
Okay.
on average.
So you effectively 4x'd about your clients.
Yeah.
Now.
Yep.
And I think there's still more growth there that's waiting to happen. I think you just need a bit of time cooking everything to get there.
Absolutely.
Which is really cool to think about. It's like, a year from now, you could be doubling that again. So I really love that. What was that transition like going from giving all the digitals to all of a sudden having to say to your clients, "You're not getting all the digitals anymore. You have to buy your portraits." What
Yeah,
was that like?
it was a tough transition because, with those, let's say 100 sessions, it was I would say 80 of those, 80% of those were repeat clients, that I'd worked with, at least for 2, 3 years. And so some of them we transitioned, where I especially when I first started, I was like, "Hey, can you go through this with me? I'm working on a new style. I'm working on, a new structure, something that'll benefit everybody. Can you just kind of go through, a couple of the this IPS, with me?" And they were great about it. And whether they bought because they were just helping me out or whether they
Yeah.
liked the product, but once they got like the prints and the products and stuff, they were like, "Holy crap, yeah, it's different." And it's funny, I what you see is what you get with me, right? I can BS all about anything, and I can talk and I can make small talk, but when I'm selling something or when I'm providing something, like it has to be real. And so, you know, the big thing was I remember, going through your courses and the 5 steps to wall art and the different vendors. And I remember like, 4 or 5 different, vendors that I would order just some samples from. And, samples for me are just things I can put on my wall. And then once I like narrowed down where I wanted and I printed my first, big metal print, which was like a 30 by 40 for a client, and it showed up. And of course I still have everything sent to me because I have a tendency to sometimes put an order in wrong or and so I like to double check still. But with this vendor, it had to come to me anyway. There was no drop shipping. And I opened it up and I looked at it. I was like, holy crap, like this is very different. It's one of those, I was like, wow, I didn't realize like I was that good, and my clients were blown away by it. They loved it. They ended up ordering like 3 more pieces. And yeah, like and so it's something that I had to see and I had to believe that it was a difference maker. And I go back and I tell my clients this too. Basically, the way I started this, where like digitals are great and they're great to when the iPhone pops up and gives you memories out of nowhere. I love that, but there's nothing like opening that bag or looking on the wall and seeing those photos from years ago and being able to touch it and being able to pass it on and things like that. And so I really where I from before my shoot and burn was not necessarily because, I thought digitals were better. It's just because I didn't wanna you know, deal with clients and ordering prints and, the, marking up and things like that, and I just wanted to avoid that.
Yeah.
And the time it takes, and it is time. So, when when you say, we go through that process of how do you price, your products, things like that. Time is a big factor in that.
Yeah.
It's not just take your number and times it by 2 or times it by 3 or whatever. It's well, no, like how much FaceTime do I have? Where we're doing the reveals or we're doing a follow up reveal or something like that. All that plays a part.
Yeah. So I think that's a big hesitation for a lot of people. They're like, I am happy making my 500 bucks, giving them their digitals and being done with my clients. I don't have the time to do image reveals. I don't have the time to deal with wall art. What would you say to them in response to that? Like, is that worth it? And really, like, with how much more time versus how much more money you're making, like, how does that all play out now in your life and in your business?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The time factor is huge, but you have to find the value in the time. I love doing the reveals because I it ends up being a game for me. Once we go through a bunch of images, I can already predict whether they're going to like the next image or not, or they completely go opposite of what they've already been doing, and it's just fun. Like some clients like look away shots, where they're not looking at the camera, they're looking off, or they're more in between pose shots. Those are the ones I absolutely love, and some clients don't love them at all. So the reveals are important because it's I don't know, I don't want to deliver you know half a bunch of photos and half of them you're not going to like anyway. I'm not going to take my time to edit and you talk about time, right? Like all the time that we take to get their favorites and stuff, or our favorites, which aren't going to be theirs. But knowing that what I create gets put on a wall or in an album and it's going to be there on their wall a long time, like that's worth it's worth it. It's
Yeah.
worth the time, and it's worth the money. And it doesn't always work out that way either. Like, you go through a reveal, and I've walked away with people, just doing the minimum, whatever their studio credit was, which I'm like, "Yeah, that's okay,"
Right.
because every reveal, like, I learned something about myself, and I learned some way to do it better,
Yeah.
regardless of how many I've done, so far.
Yeah. So effectively, right, you can do a quarter of the sessions you were doing before.
Right.
You're
Yeah. So,
spending an extra maybe hour, 2 hours dealing with the client with the
right.
new system, but you're
Depending on the
making
client, of course.
4 times the amount of money, right? So it's
Right.
like, yes, there is more time
Yeah.
spent, but there's a happier client, there's a better experience, and there's more money in your pocket for that more time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to look at flat out time, absolutely. It's whether you're spending that time talking with somebody and meeting them on their level, and getting to know them and them getting to know you, versus rapid shooting, 4 nights a week. In my seniors this year, like, I almost doubled my senior sessions within 1 year. Like, typically I'll go up like $50, $100, for those 7 years that I've been doing it. And then this year I almost doubled. I went up by, by about 80%. Um, and I had about, I lost about a third of my total number, right? Usually I'm around 45, 50. This year, I think I was at like 35, which it's not a huge drop off by any means, but there was way more money there, and I had more time, more nights to myself. Because
Yeah.
I like most of us, like, I'll shoot just one session, a day, because I want that golden hour, portrait lighting. And yeah, I mean, I'm not doing 4 sessions, a day, and giving, the first couple ones crappy lights, and shooting until, there is no light.
Right.
So yeah, it's time,
Yeah.
and it's time, and it's valuable time, because those 35 clients I worked with are no doubt going to be either referrals or repeat clients, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
How has your relationship with your clients changed from shoot and burn? You said like it was like quick, rapid, 4 sessions a week type thing versus now where you have more time to focus on those clients. Have you noticed a difference in the relationships with them?
I have, and I always feel like I had a good relationship with clients, even up to the delivery. You see this all the time, right? Photographers get annoyed when they deliver their digital gallery and they don't get a response. They don't even get like, "Oh, this is amazing." They just get nothing, and a lot of times, like, that was the end of my
Yeah.
relationship with them. So to be able to continue the experience after the session and know that you're not just there to shoot their portraits, but to help them design and help them, let them pull back the curtain a little bit and let them see, the wizard, as far as, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and you narrowed down to these 2 or these 3 photos. Let me give you my opinion.
Yeah.
Or they'll be like, hey, what's your opinion? What do you think about this one? And so it's just a better experience for them. I'm more involved, they're more involved, and they feel more comfortable with their selections, because I got to tell you, at least 75% of my shoot and burn clients never even downloaded their photos, let alone printed their photos.
That's a very valuable point. And I see that because I give my clients digital files for social media. I agree. If I go look through my galleries, how many people actually download the digital files that they
Yeah.
get with their prints? Half the people don't download them.
No. Then that just shows you, like, for me, it was like, yeah, I was giving too much. You mentioned this yesterday in your training, but I always go back to that free sushi, right? There's so much there, or they feel like they've got so much for a little bit of money that it's not valuable to them. It's not as appealing.
Yeah. I have a
Yeah.
fun question.
Yeah.
As going through the image reel process and sitting down and helping your clients pick their favorite images changed the way you shoot your sessions?
100%. Absolutely. I make sure that I shoot, first of all, both in, vertical and horizontal, to avoid cropping and losing some detail. I shoot with the picture of an album page in mind, and I shoot with the idea of where that image or where that, that portrait can hang, right? No, I 100% has changed the way I shoot, because
Yeah.
it's not just what does it look like, through, on the back of the screen. Where can this be put, right?
Yeah.
And even there's plenty of times, like during a session, where I'll shoot a set of images, and I'll show the client. I'll be like, this would look amazing as like a series of photos in an album, right? Or a set of photos on the wall. I look back and I'm like, yeah, like that's a great, like, planting a seed, and and that. But I'm like, for real, like I'm
Right.
not just trying to sell something. Like I'm really excited about it.
Right. You can see it in your head.
Yeah.
Okay, so on that note then, has the sales process surprised you as you went through and learned the sales process and started to implement it? Is it what you thought it was gonna be, or is it different than you expected?
This, as far as you mean, like the selling to the client.
Like, taking your client from the first point of contact all the way to the end, did it happen the way you thought it would? Or once you got in the program and started learning the whole process of how we get clients to buy, did anything surprise you there?
No, well, yes, a lot of it surprised me, because I am your typical consumer, right? And show me something, give me ads that pop up all the time, and eventually they're gonna get me, right? And so, like, a lot of the things I look at for my clients is, how would I react to this, and what would I say, And so I'm very critical as far as, like, how I approach, and how I, plant those seeds. And I don't want to seem fake, and I want to be genuine. And so learning that whole process was mind blowing to me, because, like, every episode, or every piece I was watching from your thing, I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's how they got me. That's why I bought this. That's why I bought that, I came from imaging, and I, purchased something, and I'm like, God damn.
It was that sales tactic that got me.
Yeah, but it was, seeing it in action, and seeing, the behind the scene, because, that's how a lot of my photography um, skills work. Like, I didn't do a whole lot of classes, and I did some of the creative live stuff, but mostly it was, I loved when photographers would post, like, behind the scenes stuff, because before the behind the scenes stuff, I'm always sitting, I'm like, all right, where'd they put the light for that? Where was the light facing? Did they have, a fill light, when they were outside, or were they using a reflector? And so a lot of times it was me, like, all right, I'll buy a reflector. All right, I'll buy a light and try this out. And then once that kind of the rage of behind the scenes happened, I was like, oh, yes, perfect. I'm like, that's all it was, one light, and it was right there, and it was, and you're metering for the sky, and I'm like, okay. But so, to go back to that though, like, the psychology of sales, again, like, I have to be 100% bought into it in order for me to sell it, which kind of takes me back. People are like, oh, why'd you get into photography? I'm like, well, because I didn't want to pay somebody else to do it. It was something I loved to do. And I didn't, for me, I'm the kind of guy, like, I don't know if you can hear it outside right now, but I've got a crew mowing my lawn, and another crew taking trees down in my yard. And I'm like, I can do all that stuff. And I've done all that stuff. I've always mowed my own lawn, and I've always chopped down trees, but it's one of those, I always did it because I didn't want to pay somebody else to do it. Now it's, well, my time is valuable, and you know what? I,
Yeah.
it's actually cheaper for me to pay somebody versus the time it takes for me to do it, or to, find my kids after they, run off, and have them help me and stuff. And so it's just a lot less of a headache. And so I want to provide a service that's convenient for people. Yes, it's going to be expensive, but you know what? It's going to be expensive if you try to create these on your own. You're going to have to take time and learn, and take time and purchase, equipment, stuff like that.
Yeah. I love that. So, what out of the process of transitioning to selling, was there anything that stood out to you that really, like, surprised you the most?
Surprised me the most with the selling? It's a good question. I would say what I kind of expected, and I think this was more of a self-fulfilled prophecy, was, I think when I first started doing it, people were hesitant to, spend the money on the prints, which I, again, like, I didn't, would I have done it? No. Would I have paid that much money for it? No. And so it was kind
Yeah.
of like, how can I expect them to? And then what was surprising is when they did, and what was great is when I actually had samples, just prints that I would do of clients or of my family, and have them in studio, because I have a small studio in the back part of my house here, which was this room that you see here is actually on paper as the master suite.
Your business took over your master suite,
Well,
Rob?
it was never the master suite. So when we moved in, full disclosure, I didn't kick my wife out of the room and moved all the stuff out. No, it's like a big part of the house that's like 2 rooms, and we used it as the kids' playroom when we moved in here. Our kids
Uh-huh.
were younger. My wife wanted all the bedrooms on the second floor, so there was 3 bedrooms upstairs, so everybody's upstairs. And so once I kind of changed this all up and everything, I was, I'm like, this is cool. Like I can actually shoot some stuff in here. I can do my portrait stuff that I love, all my artificial light. Plus, I can bring clients in now. And I think that was I think the aha moment for me was when I could actually have them here, as I'm taking pictures of their kid, they're looking around at the photos on the wall, the different, stuff I have, deliberately laid out, so
Yeah.
they can see what a fine art matte, finish mounted looks like and feels like versus me just telling them this is what I do.
Yeah.
When you have the floppy, glossy paper sitting there versus this beautiful fine art matte paper, it's different. It hits different. And that's what kind of, I think that's the biggest thing that surprised me was the ability for them to see it,
Mhm.
to then buy into it more, which again, go back to me and like, that's 100% what I would do. Like
Yeah.
I need to see stuff. For me to purchase something, it's typically, I've researched it a lot and looked at the competitors and seen, like, I'm not one to rent and then buy.
Yeah.
I like to use the whole free returns after, within 30 days. But no, I like to have it and play with it and then decide.
Yeah. I feel like you shared something important there, which was that in the beginning, you were hesitant because you weren't sure if anybody would spend the money, right? And so I think you had this hesitation going into it with those first several clients that you were like, okay, I know there's a better way. I believe in this because I think it's valuable, but I don't know if I would do it. And so it took that, like, actually just doing it to change your mindset first, because the clients can totally tell when we are doing something and we have the hesitation in the back of our mind, it will kick us in the butt time and time again
Yep.
because our clients feel it. They see it. They're like, this guy's trying to sell me something that he doesn't even act like he's excited about.
Right.
Why am I going to buy it from him? And I think that is so, so important to acknowledge. And just to point out that if anyone's dealing with that, like you have to do that work yourself on your brain and on your mindset to like try so hard going into those first several reels to be like, my clients are going to love this. They're going to want to buy it. My clients are going to love it. They're going to buy it over and over and over again in your head and psych yourself out of that weird, funky mentality because it is the easiest way to sabotage yourself going into this.
Well, and that's, don't sell something that, you wouldn't want and,
Yeah.
that you wouldn't want to hang in your house or have on display or something like that. I'm only selling products that that I would put in, in my home,
Yeah.
which I know that's definitely narrows it down, but it makes it a lot easier to sell and it makes it more genuine,
Yeah.
which people want to buy from people, they want to buy because they know that you're using what's hanging up in their house is going to be what's hanging up in your house, right? You go to your mechanic, like, well, what kind of car do you drive? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so tell me this. What is your favorite thing to personally sell? Like, what is your favorite thing that when a client buys it, you're like, yes.
I would say an album, and it's funny because it's the last album I sold. I designed the whole thing, and then the client wanted to go through it with me and like redesign it. And we did our reveal, and this was somebody who was an over lover and had way too many images, and so I legit like just built the album with 100 images in it. And I told her, I go, listen, it's too big. I go, but I want you to see what it looks like, because they could get the proof, on online. And I'm like, I just want you to go through and I want you to eliminate. Right, there's going to be a couple pictures that look the same, that are I don't. We couldn't narrow it down, but maybe if you have them on an album, you can see what they look like. And so when we met again, she really wanted to go through and design together. And it was like another like 2 hours together, which again, like I didn't have a problem with because I knew whatever she was going to get, it was what she and I built together. It wasn't going to be I don't know why you chose this picture. I don't know why, this one really didn't work here. And, well, when it comes to the albums, they're getting a whole lot of 8x10s, 5x7s, in one place in a beautiful, compact, big album. And so the price point's high, but the value is higher.
Right.
And then the time that goes into it is super, super valuable. And again, it's another opportunity to just keep building connections. This person's already referred me to 3 other clients,
Yeah.
so it pays dividends,
Yeah.
and not for the purpose of getting those, dividends. But if you go into it looking at like, oh, well, if I'm really nice to her, maybe I'll get more. No, it's gotta be what you like to do. If you're not a people person, then, if you're the introvert behind the camera that doesn't like to deal with clients, then good luck.
Yeah, it's funny. We had this conversation when I was doing Bethany's podcast interview. We talked a little bit about that introvert thing. Like, I actually consider myself an introvert. Bethany was sharing that she considers herself an introvert. So if I walk into a big room full of people, I kind of like freak out and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to talk to. But one on one, I'm good. So I would say, like, don't use your introvertedness as an excuse not to go talk to people because even introverts are normally okay one on one, right? It's the big group crowd situations that freak introverts out. And I think the other thing is that sometimes you have to learn tools to talk to people and to deal with people. And that's something like even inside the coaching program, like I'm always sharing like here's this way that you can say something to somebody that's going to get them to open up, or here's this method you can use to ask that question that's going to make it sound easy. Here's
Yes.
this method to connect with a stranger in public, right? And taking those tools and that knowledge on how to communicate and how to talk to people, and then also making it your own. Because if I teach Rob some way to ask a question, Rob's going to ask the question differently than I am, and differently than Corey or Austin or someone else. And so understanding, I think, the reason and the logic behind the things we do in our business is so valuable. And then taking those things and making them your own. Because Rob and I speak very differently, but Rob and I now use the same kind of framework to have conversations, but the conversations flow slightly differently. But the logic and the reason behind those conversations we have all point to the end result. So I think that's really, really important to remember. What would you say, Rob, the journey of like going through and figuring out how to like figure out those scripts of what to say and when to say them to clients, or figuring out how to navigate that all of the steps along the way, and me saying like here's the purpose of it, now you have to figure out how to make it work for you? What was that like for you?
It was tough because initially it was I felt like I was, even, as well as I knew it, I was still scripted. And
Yeah.
for me, I am the most unscripted person you'll ever meet. I'm a teacher as well. That's my full time career, and even that, like my lessons, I know the objective of what I want to get across. How it's going to be delivered, I don't know until I get feedback from the students.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a similar thing with clients. I'm not going to sit here, and if I realize that out of body experience, and I sit and look at myself, I'm like, dude, you're talking too much. Like I have to stop and ask a question. Like I can't stand hearing myself talk for an extended period of time, and because I again, when somebody does that to me and I'm just like sitting there, I don't hear anything. If I'm not engaged in it, if I'm not contributing, like I'm not listening.
Yeah.
And so I think the big thing about having a script, and I use that term lightly, is you can't disregard your own personality,
Yeah.
and your ability to talk to people. You have to not only give information, but you have to get information. You have to, as I said, you have to interview them. You have
Yeah.
to ask them questions, what they want, let them start talking,
Yeah.
let them kind of tell you. And then depending on what they say is when you guide that conversation. It's not easy. And when I started doing it, where it was more like a script and I wanted to get through it, I struggled and I abandoned it very quickly because
Yeah.
I'm one of those, like, I'm not going to stick with something that I feel is not working. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. Um,
And I
but
think that happens, like, I think people, so in my journey, whenever I was learning how to like have these conversations with clients, I went through so many courses or had coaches that would just be like, here's the script you need to use, here's the price list you need to use. And I would use it for a while. And then I would be like, wait, hold on. What's happening? I'm reading off of a piece of paper talking to somebody. And then I started to wonder, like, okay, I've noticed there's these trends. There's these things that people are telling me I need to say or do. But why are they telling me to do these things? Why are they telling me to ask these stupid questions that seem just like cut and paste, the same bull crap, but doesn't sound like me? Why are they telling me to do these things? And then I started looking at those things and realizing there was a purpose behind why they were doing that, and saying, okay, now I need to figure out how to turn this into a real conversation. And now I need to figure out how to turn this next part into a real conversation on this, and this on a real conversation. And I think when you're learning to have those conversations, you kind of feel like It depends on your personality. Like, I see some people that they're like, they learn the stuff, they make their script, and they're like trying to stick to it because they're like, I have to do the thing and I have to follow the steps. I have to be a good student.
Mhm.
And then you have to realize that it's not just a script, it's a deeper understanding of the conversation that's happening and learn how to flow through that naturally because then it feels organic and it feels like a real conversation with a friend and not just the telemarketer that's sitting there reading the phone script, right? And I think
100%.
that's really important.
Yeah, and teaching is the same thing. I work with people that here's the lesson plan, they have to get through it in 45 minutes, and regardless of what any kid says or does, like they're going to say what they need to say, and they're going to have them do the work that they need to do the whatever work they have to do. And I've never been able to do that. It's always I teach in a conversation,
Yeah.
format. I need engagement. I need to know that people aren't bored with me. I need to know that my message is getting across, and whether that's in the classroom or whether that's educating on what the experience working with me is like, they're equally important.
Okay. So I have a side note here, a question, I guess. I always say that like most of our job is really we're educating our clients
Mm.
throughout our process. And I always like to say when you educate someone on something, you have to say the same thing a lot of different ways and in a lot of different styles because some people are auditory learners. Some people learn by seeing the words. Some people learn by answering questions about it, right? So the process and the way I always like think about it is my process with my client, I'm teaching them and educating them along the way as we go. So that way by the time we get to the image reveal, they know what it is they want to get. They know the answer to the question and they're able to make an educated decision on that topic. So, as a teacher, do you see kind of the similarities between the process with your clients now? Now that I don't know if you've ever thought about it like that, but do you see
100%.
similarities there?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, like so, in the classroom, we have every kid is a different type of learner, right? You have your kinesthetics, you have your tactile, your auditory, your visual, right? And so our
Mhm.
lessons have to encompass all of those learning styles, and it's the same thing. Like you said, we're educating our clients, and so yeah, I have to deliver them information in different ways. It's like when you get a lead form, do you text, do you email, do you call? Right? Yeah, I might email you and text you to let you know that I'm going to call because you may. Number one, I'm a very tactile person. Hence the whole I have to show you what these products look like. You please touch them,
Yeah.
right? Like you'll be hooked. I have to show you what I do. And so even just the art of reaching out to somebody, whether both in writing and then calling. I know a lot of people are scared to death of getting on the phone.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're going to say. They don't like to talk to people. And if the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the better you get at it. It may not get easier. Hard things are hard for a reason.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're easier, but they're not. We just get better at doing it, or we get
Yeah.
more comfortable. We get more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. I love that. It's funny. So I have a 4-year-old son, and the other night he was trying to write his letters and he was getting so frustrated and mad at himself. And he's like, I'm just so bad. I cannot write my A's, mom. And he was just like, I'm a terrible at writing my letters. And I looked at him and was like, well, once upon a time, I was really bad at writing my letters too, but I worked on it and I got better. And now I don't even have to think about it. Like, and it seems so like simple and basic, but everything we've ever done in our life was hard until we did it over and over and over again. But we get to choose whether we're the 4-year-old sitting on the ground throwing a fit because it's hard, or if we're going to put on our big kid panties and do it again over and over and over again. So I think that's really important. I think there's this really bad belief in the photography industry that you can just send a bunch of emails to your clients and send them a bunch of prep guides to read and that they're going to understand and know what to expect. And I think that that is one of the worst things that happened to me in the early years of my business was just relying and depending on the fact that clients were going to actually read the
Read
information
anything.
and retain that information, right? So that's whenever I really started having conversations with people. And that's when I started asking questions of my clients, both verbally and written on a form that they would fill out, right? And so I have also learned things like sometimes I write things in a paragraph form. One time I say it, the next time I write it, I will list it in bullet points. And I will say the same thing 2 different ways because some people will never read the bullet points and some people will never read the paragraphs. So it's about over educating our clients in this way that everybody learns in their certain way. And hopefully we've kind of touched on all those points. So I really think that's an important thing to point out here, especially.
Absolutely. It's with anything, whatever you put out there, uh, and this goes on so many different levels. You put something out there once, and we have this, assumption that it's 100% it's going to be retained by the recipient, and it's not. Even and I'll go back to the classroom again. I understand that whatever I'm talking about that
Mhm.
specific day, I'm hoping 50% of them catch on to it.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying 50% of them retain everything. I just want to spark something and for them to be able to come back to that, if they need to.
Yeah.
And the next day, I hope I hit another 20% and another 20%, the next day. The worst thing we can do is assume that everybody is going to get our message in the exact same way, because it's just not going to happen. That idea that we put something on social media, we do a post and we think that great, everybody saw that, all you know 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 followers saw that one, so I shouldn't post that again, or I shouldn't reference that again. No, like, you have to do it in a different way, whether you do it in a reel or whether you do it in a carousel or something else. It's got to be repetitive, but in different formats. I think that's a big downfall of a lot of people, is they think, well, I emailed, like, yeah, man, like, I get a lot of emails. Shoot me a text, call me, send me a message like, give me a lot of different ways that
Right.
I can't avoid you.
Okay, so I have a question. In the classroom teaching, is there like a magic number that y'all say, like, this is how many times the average student has to like hear something or interact with a specific thing to actually learn it? Like, is there a magic number there that they use?
The magic number, not so much, but they have like different levels of, depending on the curriculum or depending on the program,
Mhm.
sometimes it's hey, this is just an introductory thing. Then they're going to see it again in this unit, and then they're going to expect them to know it by this unit. Unfortunately, in our education system, they assume two or three times and they
Yeah.
should have it. That's not how it works.
Yeah, and so, like, I
Yeah.
say and from the marketing world, they say, "In order to buy something, you have to be see it 8 times." So, I think, like, that means awareness takes at least 8 times of hearing
Right.
something or seeing something, and because we're so constantly bombarded, I think the number is really a lot higher now, so I
I
say,
agree.
like, 15 times. If we talk about it or share about it 15 times, then we should be guaranteed that our clients know what to expect. If we only do it 8 times, we're probably gonna end up with a client here and there that's like, "What? What's happening? I didn't read any of that stuff. I didn't pay
True.
any attention to that. I just put a random letter in that form," you know? So I think you have to kind of over educate sometimes and feel like you're overdoing it with your clients a lot of times.
Well, right, and I think too, it's the style guides and the other thing you're talking about before, they're not bad things. I don't think we abandon those. It's just know that that's just one touch point, right?
Yeah.
That's just one thing, and go back and reference it, in another thing, so they can try to connect and say, oh wait, I did get that email. Let me look back on that. I've done that plenty of times with your stuff. Like, just looking for the Zoom links. I'll do that. I'm like, I know she sent something out like 3 times, and
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth of the life we live in the world we
yeah.
live in. Okay, so tell everyone kind of what it was like as you were going through our program, like Master Your Mind and Money. So you walk through courses, you have group calls, you have one-on-one support. What was that journey like for you going through the process? And how would you explain it to somebody who's like, what is it even like to be in Corinda's circle and to work with Corinda?
It's a lot, number 1. Like, it's a lot. Like, there's a lot of material out there, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. I would say, you organized it very well, and you were very specific as to, like, don't jump around, start here, and I would say the group calls and especially the one-on-ones, like, that was, from a teacher-student perspective, like, I wanted to make sure I was prepared, right? I wanted to make sure I was, not so much of, like, getting a bad grade, but man, I just spent some money. Like, I want to make sure I'm getting what I paid for. Like, I want to make sure I'm using it. Which, how many times have we subscribed to something, and it's just a website of videos and stuff like that, and you look at it once or twice, and then you don't go back to it. I think you you have a good accountability system, that in place, and it really helps you going forward. And coming to those one-on-ones or those group meetings, with questions ahead of time. Even if you were to ask them in the Facebook group or something else, just seeing somebody else's response from there, triggers something. It's not about getting all the answers. It's about kind of just lighting that fire in a sometimes the same direction, sometimes a different direction to get your mind thinking differently. And the big thing that you did, I mean, and I've completely gone into the whole mindset thing, like, and you said you just talking about before about Kai and how I'm terrible at this. The negative self-talk, like we don't even how do we learn that, right? How do we learn that, when we try something and it's hard, we get down on ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Like thinking more about it's an opportunity. And I'm not expecting the 4-year-old to do that, but I'm saying for us, when we lose a client or when we or lose a lead and or we don't have the client doesn't come back or something like that, instead of thinking negative, oh, I screwed up, I screwed up, I screwed up, it's or even putting the blame on them, like, well, that's, they're whatever. Um, you know, looking inward and seeing, all right, what could I have done differently? What did I say? What did I not pick up on?
Yeah.
Or did it just flat out, which become very good at, it's just not my client,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that's probably been the biggest shift from my first, 5 years in business, thinking that I have to be everybody's photographer. I want to be everybody's photographer. I want to be the most popular photographer around. Like, I want to do, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. Right. To no, I'm not, I don't think we're a good fit. No, I'm not, I haven't done that before and I'm not really, doesn't really interest me, or no, that's great that so and so down, in the next town will do it for $300 cheaper. I'm like, then work with them, you
Yeah.
know, being able to let go and being able to understand that, um, you're not for everybody and everybody's not for you.
Yeah.
That, that was a huge, huge takeaway from the work we did together.
It's amazing. It's so interesting to hear when I ask people this question to hear how different everyone's perspectives on this are, like what their big thing that they really say, like, this is the one thing that I grasp onto that helped change the way I looked at my business. Okay, so I have a question. I love asking this. How much of the course videos did you actually watch? Did you watch most of them or did you skip around a lot? Did you do the thing I told you not to do and you did actually skip around,
Oh,
or how much did you
so
do?
I stayed on track, right?
You're the A+ student, Rob. That's why you're
Like,
the teacher in you.
no, no, no. Duh. Well, I wasn't finished. I stayed on track, and then I think once the videos got like 60 minutes and like 75 minutes,
The
or
marketing videos.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it was the marketing that I stopped, and I was just relying more on like the group chats, and
Yeah,
I was realizing I was definitely doing more, and I had more like in the moment questions and things
yeah,
like that. I think not that your content wasn't good. It was just I feel like I just needed something
yeah.
else at that point. And it once you fall out of it, it's hard to like jump back in.
Yeah, it's funny. I have people sometimes that will come through the program and they like barely watch any videos, but they show up to every group call and they ask questions and they're always doing their one-on-ones and they're just like, and they get so much out of it without even watching the stuff. And then I have other people that are like, they're like dedicated, like they have a schedule of how they're going to attack everything and they get it done and they will sit and watch those videos like they're in a college lecture. So it's always fun to hear different perspectives from people of like, you can show up to the calls and you can get as much out and you can just watch the course. I have some people that just watch the courses and hardly ever show up to the group calls. And so I think it's really interesting. But I would say you were definitely like a show up and listen on the group calls kind of person, that you were always there, like paying attention to what was happening and what other people were asking. And I feel like we talked a lot about the marketing stuff on the group calls anyway,
Yeah.
organically. So
No, I
yeah,
agree. And marketing, feel like that's one of the things that changes so rapidly.
it does.
I'll go back to your marketing stuff, which I definitely remember the first, couple of videos of, marketing is about educating. And I actually brought that into my marketing class, this
I love that.
semester. It's not about selling something, it's about educating people and it's about, making them aware that they want what you have, And no, I think going through it, I started out, and this is kind of my MO. I started out very structured, right? I was taking notes. I was up every morning at 3:30 in the morning doing the videos before work, and it was awesome. Of course, I was in bed by like 8 of the night before, but And then as I got into it, and I don't like to wait and implement. Like I like to, like I said, fly the plane as I'm building it.
Yeah.
Make my mistakes and figure things out. I told you, last summer when I did my first like in person uh, event at the on Cape Cod, where I was like, I did this, 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 and I'm like, I know those are all the wrong things to do, but I had to understand why I shouldn't have done that, and I 100% understand now. Like why, and just seeing you at like imaging and the way that you were, gathering lead information and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's what that looks like, or those are the little things like I pick up on, that where you get that through conversation, but so much is experience,
Yeah.
and it's just whether you want. For me, like I'm one of those. Like great, it didn't work out this time, and I don't have another opportunity for another month. I'm like, all right, I've got other stuff I'm doing, and I don't need to get it right the first time. And I think that's a huge. I think that's a whole nother podcast, but
No, I think that's important because so many times, and I always say this, like this is how I teach people. I say, here's all the mistakes I've made. Here's the way I've screwed it up. Here's the way I think works the best, and here's why. You might go try these other ways that I tried, and you might have to try them and realize that they are or are not for you. But you need to be a big enough person to realize when you try something, if I warn you, hey, there's this problem with this thing that I did, if you go do it and you see the same problem for yourself, then it's time to change.
yeah,
And that is really freaking valuable. And that's how you learn the best. And that's how, honestly, the people that I see make the biggest strides in their business are the people who are willing to build the plane as it's going, right? They're willing to try it, be like, oh, well, crap, that didn't work. I'm going to adjust that and try it a different way. Ooh, that worked a little bit better, but can I make it even better? And I think that's the difference in people who make big things out of their business and the people that just sit around listening to every podcast, buying every course, and they never do anything because they're waiting for the plane to be perfect before they take off. And you're never going to know if the plane is working until you're taking off, right? You just have to sometimes trust that what's the worst that can happen if I fail?
what's the worst that can happen, right?
And
Somebody says no,
you're
you
not
know,
doing open heart surgery. You're
right,
a
right.
photographer. The worst that can happen is if you're a photographer is like you miss the first kiss
Mhm.
or your entire memory card is corrupted from a wedding. Like that's worst case scenario. Okay.
Yeah,
That might feel life or death, but everything else is fixable.
right.
Everything else you can make right for a client. There's really not a whole lot of things that we can't make right if we mess them up or if we crash the plane. We're people and we have to trust that people are going to know we're people. So give yourself permission, anyone who's listening to this, to just do the thing and be okay with the fact that you might crash and you're going to be able to pick yourself up and go again. So,
Well, and that's super important because you know what? Best case scenario is you get some great stories out of it, right? Like I had set out on this table at this baseball game because I was sponsoring the team for the Cape Cod baseball league, and I had set up like hats and shirts and stuff, that I was selling on there, and I had pamphlets and this and that, and I had to go out and like go with my little buddy, and he had to throw out the first pitch because I was supposed to throw out the first pitch because it was like my game. I'm like, there's no way I'm throwing out a pitch in front of all these people, and these potential major league players, and so my little buddy, I took him out there, and I came back, and I'm like missing like 5 hats. Like I had like 8 of them out there, and like more than half of them are gone. I'm like, what the heck happened? Well, somebody just came and thought they were free, and just took them and walked away. And I hunted them down later and got my hats back. And
I remember this
but
story.
it's just like, you know what? It's good stories. It's great. Nobody likes a story about how the hero was perfect from the start.
Yeah.
It's you got to fall, you got to get up, and you got to keep going, figure it out.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who's thinking about getting support in their business or even joining our coaching program that we have?
Do it. Absolutely do it. Because the worst thing you could do in a business with anything is think that you know everything and think that nope, everything's fine right now. Even if you go through it and you're like, you know what, yeah, this didn't really help me, or I don't agree with this, or something else. It's the cost of tuition, right? Like it's not just of go along with something that you're guaranteed is going to work, but go try something out that you realize, hey, you know what, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like coaching, especially like working with, I don't mean to like puff you up and but it should. But you're there for the conversations. Like it's not a call when doing the one-on-ones with you or doing any of the other group things. It's not just you preaching the entire time. It's you're taking input in your problem solving and you're, hey, don't do this, but hey, try this or this. There's plenty of times that I've, come on the calls and you were like, yeah, well, why do you think that didn't work? Or what would you do differently? Or let's try this, especially in a a niche that's different from your own, the building blocks of business and communication are the same,
Yeah.
whether you're dealing with horses or whether you're dealing with, little league athletes.
Yeah.
So you're going to get perspective. You're going to get perspective, and perspective is always a great thing. Seeing somebody else's perspective, just knowing that you don't know it all and that you're just willing to get a different perspective.
Yeah. I love that. I think like what you were doing with your business was different than what a lot of the other people were doing in their businesses whenever you joined. Like you were doing some volume stuff, you were doing portraits, you were trying to find this style that you wanted to do. You were unsure how that was going to work. Like there were a lot of things in play. And I think some of it was just trial and error and figuring out where your sweet spot was and figuring out how it fit into business, but also how it fit into your life, right? Because your life in having a job and having a family and having kids that have stuff going on and all this stuff, like figuring out how to navigate fitting it all together and making it work for you. And I feel like you've done such a good job finding a good place now and with everything like your life right now of how everything has transformed since we met and since we started working together, which makes me so happy to see how this has evolved and all of this good stuff. So I really love that about this whole journey. And it's always fun watching you. And I love watching you show up on social media because I feel like you do such a good job at like just putting your face out there and talking and just doing the thing. If anyone wants to follow you on social media so they can see these amazing videos that you sometimes post, how can they follow you or how can they find you online?
Yeah. So it's Rob Faber Photography, or Rob Faber Photos. I feel like it's different on like everything. And I've changed it a couple times. You just search up Rob Faber and you'll find me.
Yeah. You had a couple brand iterations in
I
there.
did. Well, and that was like, again, all part of the brand. You just can't be afraid to be like, yeah, this isn't working right now. Like, this doesn't work for me. And you know what? It is what it is.
I love
Um,
that. Well,
yeah.
it was so good having you on here. I have
Thank you for having me.
one final question.
Okay.
Okay. If you could go back in time and give yourself when you were starting your business one 60-second piece of advice, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Holy crap.
60 seconds, Rob. I'm going to
60
time you
seconds.
here.
All right. Don't try to be everybody's photographer. And that's, I think, the big thing that I've learned is that you have to follow your passion. You have to do what you love to do. Try everything and then whittle it down. But don't take the no's personally. Don't take the negative feedback personally. And that's so much easier said than done. But you can't please everybody. Then just know that when a push comes to shove, it's just not your client. It's not a right fit for you.
I love that. That's a good piece of advice, I think, for people who are starting out. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rob. Hopefully, some of y'all listening to this have gotten some golden nugget from our conversation, or now you don't feel as alone with where you're at in your journey. Feel free to reach out to me, ask questions, reach out to Rob if there's something that really resonated with you. Tell him what it was. Thank him for being here. And I will see y'all next week. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please make sure you share it on social media or leave a rating and review. As always, you can check out the links and resources in the show notes over at masteryourmindmoney.com. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at masteryourmindmoney. And don't forget to join our free Facebook group, Photography Business Tune-Up with Corinda Kay. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.